Good afternoon, and welcome to the meeting of the Richmond Redevelopment Commission of Tuesday, February the 25th, 2025. Beth, would you please call the roll?
Michael Bloom.
Here.
Jenny Lauman.
Here.
Kathy Lucid.
Here.
Gary Turner.
Here.
Allison Zeidel.
Here.
5 are present.
Great, we have a quorum. Thank you. First item of business on our agenda is a review of the minutes of the meeting that we just had last week.
I figured while we were here.
While we're here, yes, of February the 18th, 2025. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any changes or corrections? Nope. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of February the 18th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. This is a special meeting of the Richmond Redevelopment Commission in order to consider a resolution before us of Resolution Number 5, 2025, a declaratory resolution of the Richmond Redevelopment Commission. And Beth, I believe you will be speaking to it.
Yes, thank you. So just want to give a little bit of history of how we've gotten to where we are with the Smith Hill development, which is a new residential housing subdivision on 37th Street on the east side. So a developer was identified for that subdivision, and that developer was 11th Street Development. So they will be the developer of record for this project. The developer has gone through the process with the planning department, with the Plan Commission and City Council for rezoning of the site. So the site is now properly zoned for that process. The developer submitted an application to the East Central Regional Partnership for Regional Economic Acceleration and Development Initiative Funds, which is commonly referred to as READY. This is READY 2.0. This is the second round of funding that was made available by the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. They were given a tentative award of $4.33 million for this project. The READY funding requires that whatever funding is provided by the program, that the local municipality match that funding. So with them receiving a $4.33 million allocation from the READY program, that means that as a community, we need to match that with local funds in the amount of $4.33 million or higher. In looking at how we could fund that, the Indiana Finance Authority had a residential housing infrastructure program that was available, that was accepting applications in December of 2024. In looking at our opportunities, we determined that that was a great way for us to be able to meet that local match without a large cash outlay from cash on hand. So we submitted an application in December of 2024, and you have with you an overview of the financial analysis that was used to submit that application, which that document that you have was prepared by Baker Tilly. And that shows at the time of application, what the anticipated phasing was going to be for the project, which types of homes would be built in which year, when they would be assessed, and showing how we could get to providing that $4.33 million match. This was developed at the time of application. We since met with the developer just this morning, and they are in the process of revising this build-out plan based on their conversations with developers and how they will be moving forward with the phasing of the project. So prior to the issuance of our bonds that would be purchased by the Indiana Finance Authority, we will have an updated fiscal analysis for the commission to review that will show what that building schedule is and what the revenue schedule will be and the amortization for the bonds.
Are they looking at moving it up or pushing it out?
They're looking at, based on the availability of the builders that are interested in working in the subdivision and what their capacity is and their availability. So they're hoping that they'll be able to keep it very similar to what it is, but it might be a little slower depending on the availability of the builders and what they already have committed to. With the Indiana Finance Authority, originally those applications, as I said, were submitted in December. They were expecting to make awards in March and to close in June. With changing of the administration, that timeline became accelerated, and they made their awards in January, and they wanted to close in March. We chose as a community when we submitted our application not to go ahead and go through this process without having an award and without having the security of knowing that we would be receiving that funding. So we didn't go through all of the approval process. Other communities that received awards did go through that approval process in December. So they were able to go ahead and close in February and move forward. We chose not to because we were not confident that our application would be awarded funding and that we'd be able to move forward. So we chose to wait until we had the award and more information to move forward. So that's why we're moving forward now with their schedule. With the Indiana Finance Authority program, the Indiana Finance Authority will be the bond purchasers. The last bond that we issued, the local banks purchased that bond. With this one, the Indiana Finance Authority will be the purchaser of the bonds. That interest rate is 3%. So that will be a considerable savings over the 7.5% that we've been paying on others that are being purchased in the open market. So that's what makes this program very attractive to us. This program, the Indiana Finance Authority, still requires the developer to have a taxpayer agreement. So just like with our most recent bond issuance, if the TIF revenue does not come in as anticipated, the developer is responsible for any shortfall. So that is the responsibility of the developer, not the commission, not the Indiana Finance Authority. And they enter into those agreements with the Indiana Finance Authority. The next steps are why we're here today. We need to establish a single-family housing economic development area and a housing program. And that's what Resolution 5, 2025 does for us. When you look at the document that we have at the beginning, you have the basic information talking about that we have determined that we do need to create an economic development area under Indiana Code 36714 and 36725. We talk about the fact that we have a single-family residential development housing program, and that is the information contained herein, which talks about that we will have single-family units. We will also, the program will attract construction jobs. It will increase our property tax base. It will improve the diversity of our economic base. And it will also provide essential infrastructure needed to support single-family development in the area. It continues to outline the different assumptions that it's making. It's saying that the commission on page 3 finds that the property described in Exhibit C, and Exhibit C is a map of the Smith Hill subdivision along with the parcel numbers that are being considered for the project. I'm sorry, Exhibit A is the map. My apologies. Wrong one. So that has our map and our parcel numbers that are impacted. It's showing that the costs incurred are expected to be approximately 5.5 million. And on the financial document that you have, you'll see when Baker Tilly did the estimates of the revenue that would be generated from the project, that is where that number comes from. It's a little bit higher than the 5.29 that's listed on the document, but as numbers change a little bit, they went a little high so that we didn't have to come back and change that if there was something different at that point. There are no residents that will be displaced by this project. We also know that the project will provide additional housing options that will help to attract new residents to the community and retain existing residents that are looking for new housing options. It's going to also increase and diversify our property tax base, and it will encourage enrollment and retention of students at our local schools by providing quality housing options to families, and encourage commercial development that would serve and benefit the housing area.
I had a question about that statement, the commercial development, they're talking about just off the top, a coffee shop or a
Potentially,
dry cleaner or
any-
something that,
Yeah, it would not be physically located on the site,
in the site, because
but
it's
would,
not zoned out.
correct.
But I was just curious as to if that's,
Yes, it could be additional things that would pop up on East Main that would help support the area, additional restaurants, additional service businesses, retail, any of those types of things. The more people we have, the more need we have for those types of establishments.
I also had another question on section 14. They were talking, in that last sentence, this is just for my own edification, they were talking about, let's see,
The expiration,
no, the interest or bonds or lease rentals on leases payable from tax increments. What would, give me an example of what a lease would be, where something,
Indiana code allows you to do leases. It's not,
is the Redevelopment Commission, you mean, or who?
it would allow us to fund leases,
Oh, it would.
yes,
Within this TIF
but
district?
within this TIF district.
So
We've
it
never
would be a
done that, so
lease.
We don't have a history of it.
Right,
But it-
right, but it's part of the Indiana code, so it gets mentioned in the document.
But it would be a lease of a single-family home.
Not
Not
necessarily,
own the home, and we are clear that we don't want to.
We don't own,
Right.
no.
right. Yes, it's,
So if, okay,
yes.
that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
I
it's-
just wanted, I didn't know what they.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that it does allow for you. For example, some communities, if they have a clubhouse and a golf course that are attached, they lease golf carts or something of that nature that could potentially flow through a project like this.
Redevelopment would bond the purchase of the go-karts for the golf course to lease?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
Interesting.
yeah.
Not something that I foresee in our future,
I
but
don't either, I just.
Indiana
like you
code,
said, I
yes.
never- I wasn't sure.
Absolutely. Indiana code does allow for that.
Well, before you go on, just to clarify, we're talking about a single-family TIF district, and it's already been zoned that way, correct?
It's already been zoned for single-family development.
Okay. So if somewhere down the road, say 5 or 10 years down the road, there is this desire to put an apartment building or a business in there, how does that impact the fact that it's in the TIF district? Do they lose their TIF?
No, it would just change. We
Status?
would collect a higher rate. So on an apartment complex, we would collect 2% instead of 1% within the area.
But that would have to go through zoning.
That would have to go through zoning, yes.
They would not be carved out. They would stay in that TIF.
They could potentially, the developer could request a carve-out,
Okay.
and then that would come back to this body to determine whether or not we would approve a carve-out. Yeah, it could be a
And
carve-out.
I'm just talking hypothetically
Yeah,
here,
sure.
so.
But also you said just for single-family homes, that's really not correct, because they talk about fourplexes here.
Well, condos are considered.
They're considered single-family residents.
If there's 2 or 4, and that's really
Yeah,
Yes.
my ignorance.
One family per, or one.
because they're owned,
Per
they
unit.
aren't, they
Oh, I
aren't by
see.
someone paying
Right,
rent.
I see.
Yeah, so they would have, the fourplex would have 4 separate owners.
Makes sense.
And then the townhomes, how would those be?
So those are single-family for purchase as well. So those would be purchased, each individual townhome would have its own owner.
So what's the difference between a custom home and a sunrise home?
Those are,
$100,000.
I've heard the term, I wasn't clear on what that distinguished.
that is a term the developer has put on their collection. So
Style
it's
of-
Oh, okay.
it's not necessarily something that is consistent amongst all developments. It's something that this developer has determined that that type of home would be classified as a sunrise.
Okay.
So after the Redevelopment Commission then approves this, then you'll see on page 4, it indicates that we will provide the information out to the other taxing districts, and that would then be part of our public hearing that we would be giving the 30-day notice for. And I do need to confirm the commission's availability to meet on Tuesday, April the 1st at 1:30 to hold that public hearing. We do have to advertise that 30 days in advance of the meeting.
You want to confirm that now?
I thought we did that. Oh, I guess we hadn't.
We
firmed it
didn't
up.
finalize, no.
I'm good for that.
Is everybody okay with that date?
Yes.
1:30?
Yes.
Perfect.
30.
Okay, so we will get that inserted into the timetable as well. So the resolution that is approved today by the commission then goes and is presented to the Advisory Plan Commission at their meeting tomorrow night. And they will then approve an order that indicates that our resolution and program align with the City of Richmond's comprehensive plan. And then they will provide that order to Richmond Common Council, and then at their meeting on Monday night, Richmond Common Council will entertain a resolution that approves the Plan Commission's order.
Walk us through the rest of that calendar, Beth?
So then as we move forward, then we will deliver notice of the public hearing to the newspaper on March 3rd as well. By March 7th, we'll have notice of the redevelopment public hearing published in the Palladium item as well. March 10th, we will have the ordinance to City Council for their agenda, and then Common Council will introduce the bond ordinance, and then that picks up where our typical bond process is, where we've done Flaherty and Collins, and we've done the General Mills bond from March 17th on through the notes that we have on April 7th. All of that is our typical process that we have gone through with each of the previous bonds. You'll see that there is a public hearing also at our next Redevelopment Commission meeting. That is on the confirmatory resolution, which is confirming this declaratory resolution that we have. And then the public hearing for the establishment and with the overlapping tax districts and the neighbors, that will be at the April 1st meeting that we just confirmed. So there are 2 public hearings in this process, one for the establishment and then one for that overall housing TIF area.
Tell me again the difference between those two.
So
What are we doing on March the 18th?
March the 18th, we're doing a confirmatory resolution. So this is an amending declaratory resolution, and then at that meeting, we're confirming
Okay. And
that
that's a
order.
public hearing.
And that is a public hearing, as we have done with the others.
And then the April 1st meeting,
That is the public hearing for the neighborhoods and residents and those that could be impacted with respect to the establishment of the housing TIF.
But not the bond.
Not the bond, no. And then this portion that we're doing is the portion that we're involved in, but then also the developer still has to complete steps 2 and steps 3 for the establishment of their planned unit development. So this can be a parallel action. This can happen before that. This can happen at a different time, but based on our Indiana Finance Authority funding, we're moving ours forward in advance of their work to go through steps 2 and step 3, which step 2 is their detailed development plan, which would have all of their information for the site plan, all of the different information for the street, the structures, landscaping, all of those different pieces would be part of that second step that they would go through with the Advisory Plan Commission. And then their final third step is to have all of the infrastructure improvements that were proposed in step 2, that they be dedicated to the city and installed and move forward.
So who initiates the bond and when?
So we will be initiating the bond ordinance with Common Council on March 17th.
When we meet on the 18th, we will not be talking about the bond,
No, we will be doing the confirmatory resolution.
only on the creation of the housing TIF.
Yes.
Is everybody clear? Okay.
We will actually, I did misspeak. We will be adopting a resolution to pledge TIF to the bond at the March 18th meeting.
You know, it says pledging TIF to EDC bonds. It says meaning plural, but it's just the one bond.
Correct.
Can you clarify the role of the EDC in this?
So the Economic Development Commission, they make a recommendation to Common Council as to whether or not they feel that the issuance of the bond is in the best interest of the city. So their role is to review the bond and the purposes of the bond and then make a recommendation to Common Council. They provide a project report to Common Council. And then Common Council, when they have their ordinance on second reading, then they determine whether or not to follow that recommendation or to do something different. So it's not a requirement that it be passed by the Economic Development Commission, but it does have to go before them and have a public hearing.
Beth, is that, the project report, is that where you would have things such as statistics about how many, like our negative, our deficit of housing, that kind, any of that stuff, or no?
No, the project report is more aligned with what Indiana Code requires for new projects.
Okay.
It's a paragraph. It's
Some
very
more
short.
technical data instead of, okay.
Yeah, we have, I don't believe they have completed, as part of the Ready 2.0 initiative, at some point, the Indiana Economic Development Commission or Corporation will do an economic impact study for the project. They do one for all of their projects. We had one for the F&C project. Ernst & Young completes those for them, so we get a copy of that once it comes back.
And when did you say that's?
I don't know when they will do that. It was, on ours, it was done prior to award,
Yeah.
but they've already passed that point at this time. So I don't know when that will be completed.
Usually before the developer starts construction, though. Yeah, okay.
Yes, that includes all of the information about the job impact, all of those tax revenue
Okay.
things.
Beth, just for the record, this is a carved-out TIF that's separate from what we look at on our normal finance report. It will be like other carve-out TIFs that we have. So it's not going to influence the amount that we have available for new projects in TIF 1.
Correct. Correct. It will have, just like Johns Manville has its own page in our financials, as does Heartland has its own page in our financials. This one will as well.
And the taxpayers within the area, not in the TIF area, but surrounding it, it's not coming, the funds are not coming from any taxes that they're paying.
Correct. Correct. This is on the increased, at this point, there are no residential structures there, so this allows us to collect the increased tax increment in the area on those single-family homes. That is what will come to the commission to repay the bonds and to be available for the commission to use for projects that serve and benefit that TIF.
Are there any funds being received prior to any of the homes being built on the land itself, the property?
As far as like the developer receiving from their investors or their bank,
They're paying taxes on the land, I would assume. Someone owns the land. So there's taxes being paid. Will any of that be going into TIF funds prior to any?
No, because the
single-family homes
base
going
will
in?
be set based on what the base is currently. So what's there now is what's existing. So we will only collect what's over and above what is currently existing. So what's currently there will continue to go to the overlapping tax districts as well as the municipal tax.
The base is undeveloped,
Correct.
so the increment's going to be significant.
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
Better be.
Other questions? At this point, we don't have any other information about any other potential financial asks from the developer to assist with the project. We know with all of the developments that we've entertained, there typically is an ask at some point. So I don't know at this point what that ask would be or if there will be an ask, but in our work with all of the other developers that we've worked with or are working with, there's an ask from the community. So if that does
But in the
materialize.
carve-out, they'll also be building their own little fund.
Correct.
That's in excess of anything that's paid toward the bond.
Correct. That will come to the commission, and that will be at the commission's disposal. So potentially that additional funding, it could be that Director of Public Operations comes and says, hey, we need to do some new sidewalks, or we need to add a trail, and ask to potentially use that excess funding for that. Street commissioner could come potentially and say, we have in 10 years, we have a project, or they've decided they need to add some type of infrastructure. One of the city departments could come to the commission to ask for use of those funds for that purpose.
For example, when we do our roundabouts on 37th Street, we'll pay for them that way.
Yeah,
So what you're asking about, Kathy, is what's left over
after
from
they
the
pay their,
increment
make
after
their
the
bond payment.
obligation.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, right.
Yes, that is under the jurisdiction of the commission.
As always is.
Yes.
those things.
Yes. Yes, the main difference would be what we're generating the increment on. We're generating it on residential versus commercial.
Have additional comments, Beth, that you need to review?
I think that's everything. If there are any other questions or anything that I haven't answered, I'm happy to.
I've got a question on the Appendix B, or Exhibit B, bottom of B2. acknowledges that we, the commission, may do a couple things that we would never consider doing.
Where are you?
Yes.
Bottom of B2.
Oh, these two paragraphs,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. And with the
What page is that on, please?
B2.
B2, it's the Exhibit B
Oh, let's see here.
as you move on back
wanna-
through.
Just read that into the
B.
record, Gary?
Well, again, this is probably right out of the statute, is it?
It is, correct.
And is it necessary?
It is to preserve the option for the community to do that should they choose.
And I'm assuming it just says may because it's not,
Correct. It's
Yeah.
not required, may instead of shall.
Right. Okay. So be it.
Yes. And with the economic development bonds, then those proceeds, then the developer will use those for the infrastructure. They can only be used for the infrastructure as part of the Indiana Finance Authority project. They can't use it for anything other than infrastructure.
Can't use it to build houses.
They cannot, no. It is limited and restricted by the program. And there will be claim vouchers that will have to be submitted to the trustee in order to draw those funds. So they will show their quotes, their invoices, their information. They'll provide their plans in advance, and then they'll submit documentation to draw the funds.
And who will that agent be?
The Indiana Finance Authority.
Okay.
They're making the funding available as well as being
Keeping an
the
eye on it.
owner of the bond.
Yes. And there is a possibility with the first round of residential infrastructure, there were projects and deals that did not make it to closing for one reason or another, and those funds were reallocated to other projects. We are on the wait list for additional funds should they become available if any of the other deals do not close.
More potential. Are there any additional questions? This has been new for us, so it's been a little bit complicated. We've had a lot of questions up to this point, but I think you've answered them. There's no further questions. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Would you please call the roll?
Bloom,
Aye.
Jenny Lauman,
Aye.
Kathy Lucid,
Aye.
Gary Turner,
Aye.
Allison Zeidel,
Aye.
5 are in favor.
Resolution passes. Any further business that we need to consider at this point, Beth?
No, just to confirm, our next meeting will be Tuesday, our next meeting will be Tuesday, March 18th, and then we will have a special meeting to add to our calendars on Tuesday, April the 1st at 1:30.
Keeping us busy.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Can I ask you a couple other questions unrelated to what we've talked about?
Sure.
How are things going with the Nolenberg project?
We had a meeting with that developer today. We're going back and forth on the development agreement for the project.
Really? I'm surprised.
As I said, developers can ask.
Yes. What's he asking for? Will we be shocked?
No.
Okay.
What about the apartments in the secret ingredient building?
So we're currently on hold as part of Revitalize Richmond. They are hiring a business coach, and part of going into that building and acquiring that building goes through that program. So as we look at how that moves forward, we are on a pause until all of those other program pieces are determined.
Any other business to come before the group?
Oh, could we have an update on the mechanics laundry, the previous in the depot? And
So-
making that into parking. I'm thinking warm weather, summer, festivals.
Yeah.
Parking.
So we are in the process of getting a pre-demolition hazardous materials survey for that. There'll be a request for proposals that will go out for that, and then that work will be completed, and then we can issue bid specifications for demolition.
Probably not this summer. No.
Probably won't be
Probably not.
completed this
Okay.
summer, no.
Okay.
Okay. Hearing no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.